What is consciousness? It's probably the biggest mystery in all of science. And the wild part is, it's happening inside your head, right now. Today, we're going to dig into a radical new approach that uses AI to try and decode that very mystery.
Okay, just for a second, stop and think about what's happening. As you're listening to my voice, as you're watching the screen, your brain is pulling off an absolute miracle.
It's creating your entire inner world, this whole universe of sights and sounds, of thoughts and feelings. It's that fundamental, unshakable sense that you are here, experiencing this very moment. And that experience, that's what we call consciousness. It's just being aware of that inner world and everything happening around you. And while it feels so simple and natural to us, for scientists, it is one of the toughest puzzles out there. This leaves us with two of the deepest questions we can ask. How does the physical stuff of the brain, all those neurons and electrical signals, somehow create the non-physical feeling of being aware? And maybe just as important, what exactly switches off in the brain when that awareness fades away? Well, get this. A fascinating new study is tackling this with a really powerful new tool. Researchers are combining artificial intelligence with a detailed model of the brain, and it's allowing them to simulate what might actually be happening when we lose consciousness. Okay, so how on earth do you even build a virtual brain to study something like consciousness? Let's get into how they did it, because the method is pretty brilliant. First up, you need data, and I mean a ton of data. The researchers started by training an AI system on this massive data set of more than 680,000 short recordings of brain activity. This was gathered from both humans and animals in all sorts of different states of consciousness. And here is where it gets really clever. First, they trained the AI until it became an expert at telling the difference between brain patterns from when someone is conscious versus when they're unconscious. Then, they basically plugged that AI into a virtual brain model. This allowed them to ask the model to generate two different states, one that the AI would label conscious and another it would label unconscious. By comparing those two simulations, they could hunt for the exact hidden changes in the brain's circuits that could be causing the difference. All right, so they built this incredible tool. The big question is, what did it actually find? This is where we start to see the first really groundbreaking clues from this whole new approach. For a long time, a pretty common idea was that losing consciousness was kind of like a global power down for the brain. Everything just gets weaker or quieter. But that is not what the AI model suggested. Instead, it pointed to something much more specific. Certain communication highways in the brain get disrupted. It's not just a weaker signal, it's a broken connection. And the model got even more specific, highlighting two key disruptions. The first is in a circuit called the basal ganglia indirect pathway. You can think of this as a sort of gatekeeper, helping to decide which thoughts or actions get top priority. The second is in the inhibitory cortical wiring, which is kind of like the brain's braking system, helping to keep all that neural activity from becoming totally chaotic. So it seems losing consciousness isn't just about turning the volume down, it's about these specific control systems breaking down. Now, a computer model making a prediction is one thing, right? But here's the really crucial part. The researchers then went and checked these AI-generated predictions against real-world data. We're talking brain scans and brain tissue samples from actual patients. And the evidence suggests that the model's key findings line up. So look, this is about way more than just one finding. What's so exciting here is that this could represent a whole new way of doing science. See, here's the fundamental problem. Consciousness isn't in just one spot. It seems to emerge from this mind-bogglingly complex interaction, a dance between many different brain systems all at once. And that complexity makes it almost impossible to pin down a simple cause and effect. And this is where the big shift is. Traditional methods are mostly about observing the brain and looking for correlations, but this approach uses AI to go a step further, to generate testable ideas about how the brain actually works. It's less like just watching the weather and more like building a climate model to ask what-if questions and actively probe the system. And it's not just me who thinks this is cool. Other experts are really taking notice. Dr. Andrea Pigarini, a researcher at the University of Milan, called this framework innovative and potentially groundbreaking, and he pointed out its potential to impact not just the science, but also the actual care of patients. So, if this is the tool, where does it take us next? What does the future of this kind of research even look like? Well, if this approach gets better and more refined, it could fundamentally change how we study the mind. Now, it's not going to give us the final answer overnight, but it could act like a powerful searchlight, helping scientists test which of the thousands of hidden brain pathways are the ones that actually matter for creating awareness in the first place.
And that kind of efficiency could push neuroscience so much closer to answering the ultimate question. I mean, it's one thing to figure out how a complex system like consciousness breaks down, but by doing that, we might just get our best clues yet as to how it's built. What kind of brain organization is needed for it to even exist at all?
All of this, it brings us full circle, right? Right back to that huge central question. But now we can look at it through a completely new lens.
Think about it. We all know AI has transformed so much of our world. It's changed how we search for information, how we write, how we make art. It's pretty much everywhere.
But this research raises a really fascinating possibility. What if, beyond all those other things, one of AI's most important and lasting roles is to act as a mirror, a tool that finally helps us decode the hidden workings of our own minds?
I mean, if we are now building tools that can realistically simulate and predict the loss of something as profound and mysterious as awareness, then how much closer are we to truly understanding the nature of awareness itself? What it is, where it comes from, and what it even means to be a conscious being in the first place? Now that's a question really worth thinking about.